The envelope was already sealed when my phone lit up on the kitchen counter. I had spent 3 days working up the nerve to go, 3 days rehearsing what I'd say, how I'd stand, how I'd hold myself together, when I walked into my grandmother's house and sat across from the brother who had been managing her estate for the past 2 years. My coat was on, my keys were in my hand, the drive was 40 minutes and I had timed it perfectly. Then my accountant called. Not a text, a call. Vince never called. I almost let it go to voicemail. I almost did. "Do not go to that meeting," he said, before I could even say hello. His voice had that particular flatness that people use when they're trying not to panic out loud. "I need you to sit down and listen to me for the next 10 minutes, and I need you to not react until I'm finished." A second later, my phone buzzed with a text from my older brother. "You on your way? Grandma's asking for you." I stared at both screens. The contrast was so complete it felt physical, like two hands pulling in opposite directions. I set my keys on the counter. I sat down on the edge of the couch. I said, "Tell me. Before I get into what Vince found, drop a comment below. Have you ever had a moment where something stopped you from walking into a room? Some feeling, some phone call, some instinct you almost ignored?" Because I've had gut feelings before. But this wasn't a gut feeling. This was a spreadsheet. Vince had been doing my personal accounting for 4 years. He was the kind of man who communicated entirely in bullet points and quarterly summaries, who had never once in our professional relationship used the word urgent. So when he said it that night, I felt the floor shift. "Your brother has been drawing from the estate account," he said. "Not in one lump sum. That would have triggered an alert. Small amounts, 800 here, 1200 there, 11 months of it." I said nothing. "I only caught it because you gave me read access to the secondary trust documents last spring, when you thought there might be a discrepancy in the property tax filing, remember? You gave me that access and then we resolved the issue and I never revoked it. I was doing a routine audit this week, and I found the withdrawals. 31 of them. I still said nothing. The total is just under $60,000. But that's not why I'm calling." He paused. I could hear him breathing. "He filed an amended power of attorney form 2 weeks ago. He had it witnessed and notarized. He had it backdated to 18 months ago." That was the sentence that broke something open in my chest. My grandmother is 81 years old. She has moderate cognitive decline. She doesn't always remember what she had for breakfast, but she remembers us. She remembers our names, our birthdays, the songs she used to sing when we were little. She is not incapacitated. She is not incompetent. She is just old and tired, and she trusts her oldest grandchild because he was always the one she called responsible. The amended POA gave my brother full unilateral control over her finances and her healthcare decisions, effective immediately. It superseded the shared arrangement that she had set up with her estate attorney 4 years ago, the one that required 2 signatures, his and mine, for any expenditure over $5,000. With the new document, he didn't need me at all. "The meeting tonight," Vince said carefully, "is not about reviewing the estate. I've been making some calls this afternoon. Her estate attorney has been trying to reach her for 3 weeks and keeps being told she's unavailable. There's a care transition document that got filed with the county last week, listing your brother as sole medical proxy. And the facility he's been researching." "What facility?" "There's a memory care placement in Scottsdale. Private. Expensive. And it has a contractual clause that transfers co-signatory rights to the placing family member for the duration of residency." I had to put the phone down for a moment, not because I was crying. I wasn't. I just needed to breathe. What he was describing was a cage with a very soft mattress. Move our grandmother to a memory care facility 500 miles away, establish himself as sole proxy, use the POA to consolidate all financial decisions, and with me off signature, off record, cut entirely out of the process, the trust, the one our grandfather had built over 60 years of running a plumbing supply business, the one that was supposed to pass to the 2 of us equally when our grandmother died, would flow entirely through him. My grandmother would be alive. She would be comfortable. She might even be happy, and she would be completely, permanently inaccessible to me. "Why is he inviting me to this meeting?" I asked. Vince was quiet for a moment. "Because you need to sign something." Of course, there it was. Something needed my signature. Something that probably looked, on its surface, entirely reasonable. A care transition consent. A preliminary estate reorganization. Maybe just a simple acknowledgement form. Something that would seem like I was agreeing to a plan rather than surrendering my rights. Something my brother could file alongside the POA as evidence that I had participated willingly. For a minute, maybe 2, I sat there in my coat with my keys on the counter and felt the cold wash of it settle over me. My brother. My grandmother's kitchen. The handmade quilt on the armchair she always sat in. The way she called me sweetheart even now. Even when she sometimes forgot what year it was. I had spent my whole life assuming the people who were supposed to love you actually did. I thought about the last 2 years. The slow drift. The way my calls to my grandmother started getting answered by him instead. The way he'd started describing her as declining faster than you realize every time I raised a concern. The way my name had quietly disappeared from the contact sheet at her doctor's office. I'd only noticed by accident when I'd tried to call ahead of a visit. He'd explained it as a clerical error. I'd believed him. The phone was still warm in my hand. "Vince," I said, "how solid is this? I wouldn't have called you if I wasn't sure. Can it be undone? The POA? If it can be proven she lacked capacity when she signed it, Or that she was unduly influenced. Yes, that requires a legal challenge. That takes time. And it's harder to win once someone is already relocated. That was the piece that mattered. Once she was in Scottsdale, everything changed. Distance was the weapon. Distance and time. He just needed to move her before I understood what was happening. And tonight's meeting, the document he needed me to sign, was the last step. If I didn't go, he'd send it to me by courier. Or he'd tell my grandmother I refused to cooperate, or he'd simply move her anyway and explain my absence as indifference. I needed to be in that room. I'm going, I said. That is not what I'm advising. I know, I'm going anyway. But I'm not going as someone who's about to sign something. Is there anything I can do in the next 2 hours that gives me leverage? He was quiet for a moment. Then, get a cognitive assessment, geriatric specialist, or even an urgent care with the right intake form. You need a professional time-stamped evaluation of your grandmother's current mental state. If she's competent, actually competent, then the POA can be immediately challenged on the grounds that she had capacity and was manipulated. And you need her to be the one who says so. She'll be there tonight, then you need to talk to her alone. I hung up and sat very still for 30 seconds. Then I called my cousin. She's 22. She's the quiet one. The one my brother had always dismissed as irrelevant because she was young and she wasn't in the will. She had been staying with our grandmother for the past month, helping with grocery runs and medication reminders, and she adored her in the uncomplicated way that only very young people can adore very old ones. She answered on the second ring, whispering, "Are you coming?" she asked. "He's been weird all day. Really organized weird, you know? Like when he's about to do something. I know. Listen to me." I kept my voice as level as I could. "Is Grandma awake? Is she herself today?" "Yeah, she's good today, actually. She made me sit with her and look at pictures from the 70s. She was sharp. She knew all the names." "Okay, good." I pressed my hand flat against my knee to stop it from bouncing. "I need you to do something for me. Don't react to this out loud, just listen. There are probably documents on the dining room table or in his bag, maybe a folder. I need you to find a reason to go through that room in the next 20 minutes and look at what's there. Don't touch anything. Just look. And I need you to get our grandmother alone if you can. Even just to bring her tea. Don't say anything about tonight. Just sit with her. Can you do that?" A pause. Then, very quietly, "He's been keeping her out of the dining room. Said he was setting up for the meeting." My jaw tightened. "Okay, then just stay close to her. I'm on my way." I made one more stop before I got on the highway. My grandmother's estate attorney had been trying to reach her for 3 weeks. I had his number because he'd called me once, 6 months ago, with a routine update. I called him from the parking lot of a copy shop while I was waiting for a document to print. He picked up on the first ring, which told me he was also concerned. I explained what Vince had found. He was quiet in a way that sounded like confirmation. He said he had been attempting to schedule a routine review with my grandmother for over a month, and had been told repeatedly that she was resting, or unavailable, or that she preferred to have family present, and her family would be in touch. He said he had concerns about the amended POA document but hadn't been able to get traction because he hadn't been able to speak to her directly. "I need you on the phone tonight," I said. "Not to do anything official yet, just available. If I call you, pick up. I'll be here." I printed the one thing I needed and drove. The house was 40 minutes from mine and I knew every turn of it. My grandmother had lived there for 43 years. The magnolia in the front yard that my grandfather had planted when my mother was born. The porch light that had been on a timer for as long as I could remember, clicking on at dusk regardless of the season. The welcome mat that said home in letters so worn you could barely read them anymore. My brother's car was in the driveway. So was one I didn't recognize. I sat in my car for a moment. The porch light was on. From inside I could see the warm glow of the kitchen, the shadows moving. I thought about the last time I had sat in this driveway and felt nothing but relief to be arriving. Every Thanksgiving, every Easter, the summer I was 12, and my parents were fighting and I'd spent 6 weeks here, and my grandmother had taught me to make pie crust from scratch, and told me that most hard things got easier if you kept your hands busy. She deserved better than what was happening to her. I got out of the car. My brother met me at the door. He was dressed nicely, blazer, no tie, the careful casual of someone who wanted to seem relaxed while being anything but. He had our grandfather's broad forehead and our grandmother's green eyes, and when he smiled, I could see both of them in his face, and I hated that I could. "You made it," he said, pulling me into a hug that lasted about a second longer than it needed to. I could feel him checking, not for a wire, but for my mood, for whether I suspected. "Grandma's been asking about you. Where is she?" "Living room. She's tired. It's late for her." I wanted to get through the paperwork quickly so she can rest. Paperwork, not the meeting, paperwork. Like it was an errand. "Sure," I said. "Let me say hi first." I didn't wait for him to lead me. I went to the living room, and my grandmother was in her chair. The good one with the high back that she'd had for 20 years. And the quilt was across her lap even though it was July. My cousin was on the footstool beside her, and when she saw me come in her eyes went fractionally wide, and then back to normal in less than a second. My grandmother looked up and her whole face changed. "Oh, there she is," she said, and her voice was warm and clear and entirely herself. "Come here. Let me look at you." I sat on the arm of her chair and let her take my hand. Her hands were smaller than they used to be. They always surprised me now how small they had become. "You look tired," she told me. I'm okay. I squeezed her fingers. How are you feeling? You seem good today. I'm always good, she said, with the particular dignity of someone who had decided long ago that complaining was a waste of good time. Your brother's been fussing at me all week. Said I needed to rest before tonight. You'd think I was made of glass. What did he tell you tonight was about? She looked at me with those sharp green eyes. Even now, even with the fog that came and went, there were moments where she was completely, entirely present. This was one of them. He said there were some papers to sign. Something about making things easier for everyone. She paused. I told him I wanted you to look at them first. He said you would. She didn't say she was worried, but her hand tightened on mine just slightly. I'm going to look at them, I told her. I promise. And before I look at them, I'd like you to talk to someone quickly. Someone who can help make sure everything's being done right. Would that be okay? She studied me for a moment. Is something wrong? I just want to be careful. Because you matter, and because Grandpa worked too hard for any of this to go sideways. She was quiet, then she said, simply, all right. My brother appeared in the doorway. Ready when you are. I've set up in the dining room. I stood. Actually, I said, I need a few minutes with her first, private. Something crossed his face. He covered it quickly. She's tired. She doesn't need to be. She's fine, my grandmother said from her chair. Her voice had a quality I remembered from childhood, the voice she used when a thing was decided. Let her talk to me. He left. He didn't have a choice. I sat back down. I explained quietly and carefully what Vince had found. I didn't dramatize it. I used plain language. I watched her face. She didn't look confused. She looked betrayed, which is a different thing entirely. I didn't know about any facility, she said when I finished. I thought we were signing something about the property taxes. He told you different things. He told me different things, she confirmed. I called the estate attorney from her living room, on speaker, with my grandmother present. He asked her 3 questions and she answered all 3 of them correctly. Her full name, the date she had signed the original trust documents, and the name of the document she believed she was signing tonight. Her answers were precise. Her voice was steady. He told her what the amended POA actually granted. The silence in the room afterward was total. My brother knocked on the doorframe. We should really get started. Come in, I said. We have some questions. What happened next was not a confrontation exactly. It was more like a slow deflation. My brother had built his plan on the assumption that my grandmother wouldn't understand what she was signing, and that I would walk in without knowing what I was walking into. He had needed both of those things to be true simultaneously. Neither of them were. When my grandmother said, in her clear, firm voice, that she did not consent to the amended POA, and that she wished to speak with her attorney the following morning to have it reviewed, my brother's face did something complicated. He tried several things in succession, reason, then frustration, then a kind of wounded confusion, as if he genuinely couldn't understand how this had gone wrong. He kept looking at me. I kept my face entirely still. The unsigned document sat on the dining room table. The strange car in the driveway turned out to belong to a financial advisor my brother had hired. Someone who had been waiting in the kitchen, ready to walk my grandmother through the paperwork. He left when it became clear the signing wasn't happening. My brother left an hour later. My grandmother held my hand at the door and watched his taillights disappear down the street. He was always the one I worried about least, she said quietly. Funny how that works. I didn't say anything. I just held her hand. In the weeks that followed, the estate attorney filed a formal challenge to the amended POA. The backdated document was flagged by a forensic examiner. The notary's stamp didn't match the date it claimed. My brother had been sloppy, or overconfident, or both. The financial withdrawals were documented and reported. The process was not fast, and it was not clean. And there were phone calls I dreaded and meetings I had to sit through. And a moment in a parking garage where I sat in my car for 20 minutes, before I could make myself drive home. But my grandmother did not go to Scottsdale. She is still in the house with the magnolia tree in the front yard. My cousin moved in full time. I visit on Sundays, and sometimes we make pie crust. And she tells me about things that happened before I was born like they're news. And I listen like I'm hearing them for the first time. The trust is frozen pending the legal review. My brother's attorney has been in contact twice. I don't respond directly. Everything goes through Vince and the estate attorney now, which is how it should have been from the beginning. Someone asked me recently if I was angry, not at my brother specifically, at the whole situation. At the version of reality where I got in my car that night and drove to my grandmother's house and sat down at that table, and signed something I didn't understand, because I trusted someone I shouldn't have. I thought about it for a long time before I answered. I'm not angry. I'm something else. I'm the person who almost didn't pick up the phone, who almost let it go to voicemail because I was already in my coat, already running through the script in my head, already so committed to getting through the evening that I had stopped paying attention to the signals. The signals were there. They had been there for 2 years. The unanswered calls, the explanations that always made just enough sense. The slow, careful way he had made himself the first point of contact for everything involving her. So gradually that I had barely noticed it happening. I noticed it now. There are people in your life who will hold your hand and look you in the eye and tell you they're doing this for the family. They will say it gently and often and with complete conviction. And sometimes they'll even mean it. In whatever warped way a person can mean something like that. But the moment someone tries to make you a stranger in your own grandmother's house, they have told you everything you need to know. Pick up the phone, read the documents, sit down before you sign anything. And if someone who loves you, really loves you, tries to stop you at the door, let them.